Hello there, this is L24 Midnight News, and coming up next in our news program. On sideline of his participation in the United States-Africa Leaders Summit, Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman held bilateral meetings with U.S. business leaders and members of Congress. Algeria and Mauritania agreed to start studies on the road project linking the Algerian Tindouf and Mauritanian Zouirat in the next few days. Leaders of Hamas movement swore defiance in Kirkuk display of force on Wednesday. And in Qatar's FIFA World Cup, France, the cup holder, qualified for the second time consecutively to the final to face Argentina, and Croatia plays Morocco for the third place. Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman said that Algeria's new investment law is based on comprehensive and proactive vision in ensuring the concerns of clients and companies. At the American Summit in Washington, the Prime Minister stressed that the new legislation was precedent in Algeria's history and had enabled a revolution in the investment environment as a result of what he called a profound analysis of investment constraints drawn on studies by World Bank and International Monetary Fund.
I hope there will be a win-win partnership between Algeria and different investors who want the Algerian market that represents more than 44 million consumers, and it's a market close to Africa, Europe and the
Also, Mr. Ayman bin Abdulrahman invited American companies to establish win-win partnership in views of advantages offered by the Algerian market.
Algeria has reconsidered the regulations about investment in Algeria in order to give people confidence to the investors. For the first time in the history of Algeria, we have passed a law to all the aspects of applicability that pertain to investment. This is the first time that we have done that in Algeria.
In the same line of thought, Algerian Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman announced a significant increase in the volume of trade exchanges between Algeria and the United States during the first 9 months of the current year. Bin Abdulrahman, in a meeting held on the sidelines of his participation in the works of a first day of a U.S.-Africa summit, estimated the value of trade exchange between the two countries during a period from January to last September at more than $3 billion, which places Algeria in the rank of the third trading partner of the United States, America in Africa.
Algeria is the third trading partner of the United States of America in Africa, as the volume of trade exchanges between Algeria and the United States approximated to $3.1 billion during the first 9 months of this year, a significant increase compared to the last year.
Ayman bin Abdulrahman, in a meeting he held Tuesday in Washington with American businessmen, confirmed that Algeria has become a real investment destination, reiterating the state's determination to protect investors and provide all conditions for the success of investment.
Algeria has now become a real investment destination thanks to the reforms embodied by the government, especially with the new legal and regulatory framework that governs investment in Algeria and which establishes important principles, especially the freedom of investment, as it allows everyone to choose investment without any exceptions between its national customers and resident and non-resident foreigners, while establishing transparency and equality in dealing with investments.
Within the same summit, U.S. President Joe Biden called Wednesday for a long-term partnership with Africa rooted both in trade and good governance, as U.S. businesses unveiled billions of dollars for the continent where China has become a top player.
And holding the first of its kind summit in 2014, was a watershed moment to cement new kinds of partnerships between our nations. Partnerships not to create political obligation, not or foster dependence, but to spur shared success. And I emphasize shared success and opportunity.
Chinese foreign spokesperson said Beijing is strongly opposed to the transformation of the African continent into a source of competition between China and the United States, adding that China refused to use Africa as a tool to limit other countries' cooperation with the African continent. Chinese diplomat also called on the United States to consider China's African cooperation with an open mind. This comes at a time when the United States is hosting the African-American Summit over 3 days. In a move to restore the trust gap that has been dominant in the relations between the United States and the African continent, U.S. President Joe Biden is hosting a 3-day U.S.-Africa summit. This comes after a long time of frozen relations and trust crisis with the U.S. commitments in Africa.
Dozens of African leaders have arrived to Washington in the United States to participate in the proceedings of the 3-day U.S.-Africa Summit. President Joe Biden is to hold the key summit in an attempt to restore the ties and narrow a wide trust gap of the USA with African countries, which has been frozen for a long period.
President Biden believes that U.S. collaboration with African leaders, as well as with civil society and business leaders and the diaspora, women, youth, is essential to unlocking the potential of this decisive decade.
U.S. National Security Advisor announced that this event is rooted in the recognition that Africa is a key player in the geopolitical status of the world. The U.S. pledged ahead of the summit $55 billion in economic, health, and security support to Africa over the next 3 years.
The summit, just to take a step back, is rooted in the recognition that Africa is a key geopolitical player. The continent will shape the future not just of the African people, but also the world.
In the lead-up to the 3-day U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit, Biden administration officials played down their increasing concern about the widening activity of China and Russia in Africa, which is home to more than 1.3 billion people. Instead, administration officials tried to put the focus on their efforts to improve cooperation with African leaders.
I would say 3 things make me confident that we will have a positive result from the summit. The first is we are bringing the resources to the table in significant numbers. And if you compare what the United States is committing over the next 3 years to what any other country is committing, I think we stack up extremely favorably. So we will make the case with passion and persistence to every country in the world that they should speak out against these flagrant violations of the UN Charter. But we're not imposing conditionality from the point of view of this summit on decisions that sovereign countries make in this regard. We believe that we have.
Analysts say that African leaders will be looking for Biden to make some major commitments during the summit, including announcing his first presidential visit to sub-Saharan Africa, efforts to bolster the continent's economy through private sector investment and trade and more.
Algeria and Cuba formed on Wednesday a joint coordination committee to implement the decisions taken during the recent visit of Cuban President last November. Algerian Energy and Mines Minister Mohamed Arqab discussed with Cuban delegation headed by Deputy Prime Minister Ricardo Capre, who was accompanied by the Cuban Minister of Energy and Mines, ways to implement cooperation works in the field of hydrocarbons and supplies of petroleum products agreed upon during the visit of the Cuban president, as well as construction of a solar power plant by the Algerian Sonalgas in Cuba.
Working groups have been decided today to be put between Algeria and Cuba. It will begin its work starting from this evening in order to put a roadmap between the two countries in the context of the application of President Abdelmajid Tebboune and his Cuban counterpart. We will begin through this program to develop relations between Algeria and Cuba in the fields of hydrocarbons, energy, electricity and mine.
Algeria and Mauritania agreed to start studies on the road project linking Algerian Tindouf and Mauritania's Zouirat in the next few days at the end of the works of the first session of the Joint Committee to follow up on the implementation of the bilateral Memorandum of Understanding to complete the project in conjunction with the completion of the first part of it, which is located on Algerian soil along 75 kilometers. Europe is bracing for hard winter and is speeding up its efforts to alter its dependence on Russian gas to African one. And Algeria is among some alternative countries to be a major exporter of blue fuel to Europe.
Amid the energy crisis that hit hard, Europe keeps searching for an alternative of Russian gas, which Moscow tended to reduce as a response to Western power sanctions against it. Many European states resorted to some African and Gulf countries to fill its energy shortage. According to the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Italy is moving steadily towards achieving energy sufficiency and become a regional center for energy supply between Africa and Europe. Meloni reaffirmed that its country's historic and strategic partner, Algeria, is planning to make Italy a platform for exporting Algerian gas and electricity to the rest of the continent.
Italy's strategy that the government wants is increasingly poised to transform our country into an energy supply center, linking southern Europe to Africa. In the dramatic situation we're in, there are hidden opportunities that we should be able to seize. We Italians are very good at turning difficulties into opportunities.
Meanwhile, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune instructed Sonatrach Group to double its blue fuel exports to reach 100 billion cubic meters per year. The Algerian president has also emphasized that Algeria's supply of natural gas to Europe was far from political considerations. On the same context, European Union energy ministers meeting in Brussels on Tuesday failed to strike a final deal on a block-wide cap on natural gas prices after months of infighting over whether the measure can ease Europe's energy crisis. Europe plans to get ready to cope with the coming winter, as Russia is expected to prolong its military operation in Ukraine. The extraordinary energy crisis in the continent could grow next year and put it into the worst energy crisis ever.
After a quiet electoral campaign, Tunisia enters a decisive stage amid a state of anticipation of what will happen to the political scene in the wake of the second stage of the roadmap drawn by President Kais Saied after the one in which the new constitution was approved last July, a station that Saied relies on within his vision of completing the construction of the institutions of the state. Spanish expert Carlos Ruiz Miguel, professor of constitutional law at the University of Santiago de Compostela, revealed that Pedro Sanchez's letter addressed to the King of Morocco regarding the conspiracy against the rights of the Sahrawi people was forced to be signed by Moroccan lobbies. In the Middle East, leaders of Hamas movement swore defiance in a choreographed display of force on Wednesday as one of the most hardline right-wing governments in the Zionist history looks set to take office later this month. The movement's leader in Gaza, Yahya al-Sinwar, said that Al-Aqsa Mosque complex in Al-Quds is threatened with infringement by the Talmudic fascist Zionist rightist government and said Hamas would respond with force.
Regarding what goes on the enemy's political corridors and the formation of Talmudic, fascist, Zionist, righteous and extremist government, and according to what is leaked out of the agreement of the government coalition, which intends to accelerate the process of Judaization of Al-Aqsa Mosque and turning it into the temple, as well as Judaizing the city of Al-Quds and the erasure of the Arab, Islamic and Christian presence in it. We will come to you with an endless number of rockets. We will come to you with an endless number of soldiers. We will come to you in millions.
First summit between leaders of Turkey, Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan aims to deepen cooperation in trade, energy and transportation kicks off in western Turkmenistan city of Awaza.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, his Azerbaijani counterpart Ilham Aliyev and Turkmen President Serdar are meeting for a trilateral summit in Turkmen Awaza, a city on the shores of the Caspian Sea. During the meeting, Erdogan declared that the conflict in Ukraine, as well as regional instability, placed the security of energy supply at the top of the global agenda.
The coronavirus pandemic, along with war and regional instability, have once again put the security of energy supply at the top of the global agenda, while underlying the importance of transport and protecting supply chains.
The president signed 5 agreements in various areas, including trade, culture, energy and transport, which aim to strengthen cooperation. Recep Tayyip Erdogan backed the creation of a new gas pipeline that could reduce Europe's dependence on Russian gas, linking energy-rich Turkmenistan to the existing pipeline between Azerbaijan and Turkey.
The Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline and the Southern Gas Corridor stand out in this respect. We transport gas from the Caspian Sea to Europe through Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey, which is the backbone of the Trans-Anatolian gas pipeline. We need to start work on transporting Turkmen natural gas to Western markets in the same way.
This meeting is timely for the European Union, which is trying to free itself from its energy dependence on Russia since the invasion of Ukraine. Erdogan has been following a line since the start of the conflict on February 24 that has allowed him to maintain good relation with Russian President Vladimir Putin while supplying arms and talking to Kiev. He notably supported Putin's idea of creating a new gas hub in Turkey, allowing Russian gas exports to the EU to continue, bypassing existing pipelines through Ukraine and under the Baltic Sea.
EU and ASEAN leaders reaffirmed that partnership based on shared values and principles at the meeting today in Brussels. Marimsia.
European Union and Southeast Asian countries commemorated 45 years of diplomatic ties Wednesday at a summit to deepen economic ties amid political distractions ranging from the Russian-Ukrainian conflict to a bribery scandal.
There might be many, many miles that divide us, but there are much more values that unite us. For 45 years now, indeed, ties between the European Union and ASEAN have grown stronger and stronger. And today our strategic partnership is more relevant than ever. Because if we literally stand at the opposite sides of the world, our destinies are linked more than ever before.
EU leaders hosted counterparts from ASEAN in a nod to Asia's economic rise, but the meeting took place amid increasing challenges for the 27-nation European bloc. For example, disrupted energy supplies that have affected financial markets and driven up inflation, causing increased cost of everything from food to heating. Fearing challenges from China, a worse economic situation and the risk of a recession, especially after 2 years of pandemic, the EU is seeking to expand and diversify trade and investment with much of the world. The European Commission President von der Leyen offered an investment package over the next 5 years worth 10 billion euros under the EU's Global Gateway strategy.
Team Europe is putting forward an investment package for ASEAN worth 10 billion euros until 2027. If we want to link our zones of growth, we need to upgrade our economies, upgrade clean energy, the digital infrastructure, from wind farms to solar power plants.
Today, Europe has decided to diversify and boost trade with some of the world's fastest economies in a world that is taking an alternate route.
China says it is firmly opposed to the plan to recast Japan's defense, which is the most important in the case to address China's threat. The letter strays from commitment to bilateral relations, said the spokesman for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Despite the facts, Japan's defense policy plan deviates from its commitment to bilateral relation and consensus between China and Japan, and contains baseless slanders against China. China is firmly opposed to that. We've made our solemn position clear to the Japanese side through diplomatic channels.
The US military launched a new space unit in South Korea on Wednesday, a move taken to reinforce the Allies' capability of responding to escalating missile threats by North Korea. A ceremony marking the launch of US Space Forces Korea was held at US Air Base in Ulsan.
The U.S. military is faster, better connected, more informed, precise, and lethal because of space. The establishment of the U.S. Space Force in 2019 has helped ensure the United States is postured to deter aggression and outpace potential adversaries in the face of changing threats in the space environment and growing threats elsewhere. Specifically, the activation here today of U.S. Space Force Korea, a subcomponent of U.S. Space Forces Indo-Pacific, enhances our ability to defend the homelands and ensure peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia.
Small boats loaded with migrants heading for British shores from France capsized in the freezing waters of the English Channel on Wednesday, resulting in 4 deaths, according to the British government. English media Sky News said some people had been transferred to hospital in Ashford, Kent, but it was not known if they were survivors or fatalities. And now for more international news, let's follow this roundup.
Kosovo leaders on Wednesday signed a formal application seeking the status of candidate for membership in the European Union, which they intend to hand over Thursday to Czechia, which holds the EU's rotating presidency. This agreement comes amid the long-lasting dispute with neighboring Serbia.
We are undertaking a decisive step toward vitalizing our collective dream, our irreversible ambition. Today we're together to take our country a step nearer the European Union, thus contributing that the EU itself goes a step nearer to vitalizing of the whole free Europe in peace.
In a speech to the Italian Parliament, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni stated that Poland is on the front lines of the conflict with Russia and that Poland is the nation in Europe that is shouldering all the burdens of the Ukrainian people.
I keep hearing remarks about Poland, and I point out that Poland is the nation in Europe that is shouldering all the burden of the Ukrainian people, that is in the front row of the confrontation against Russia, that according to NATO it could be one of the next victims of a Russian expansion attempt. What is the message we give Russia when we say that Poland is not our friend? Beware, gentlemen, of the priorities we give to ourselves.
Supporters of ousted Peruvian President Pedro Castillo clashed with riot police in capital Lima on Wednesday, while others took to the streets to celebrate the ex-leader's impeachment trial. Outside a prefecture building where Castillo is reported to be detained, dozens of people waved Peruvian flags and cheered Castillo's downfall, while the riot police fired tear gas to clear Castillo supporters. Thousands of migrants that recently made their way to northern Mexico crossed into El Paso over the weekend in one of the largest ever crossings on that part of the Texas-Mexico border. The migrants include a large group believed to have been kidnapped by organized crime in the Mexican state of Durango, as 4 migrants said people dressed as police officers stopped the buses they were traveling in and attempted to extort them.
Ending up with sport, France set up a high-weight World Cup final against Argentina after an early goal by Theo Hernandez and a late one from Randall Colomwani, and the battling Morocco's dream ran via an action-packed 2-0 semi-final victory on Thursday. France will be hugely relieved to become the first defending champions to reach successive finals since Brazil in 2002, and can now look forward to Sunday's showdown when they will bid to follow Brazil 1962 and Italy 1938 as the third team to retain the title. Ladies and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And for now, good night.